All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear us okay? All righty. Hang on one second. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I know that Mayor Branch and Commissioner Hughes and Commissioner Lucas came to City Hall last night and saw the presentation by our friends at Dover Kohl, but we're looking forward this morning to going through the presentation and share what they have put together after their time here back at the end of January, hearing from the community. As a reminder, we're joined by Amy Groves to my left and Claire Morris Williams to my right with Dover Kohl. You can't see them, but Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Jones and Mr. Fuller are in here as well as Mr. Murphy. So we're going to go through this presentation with the Dover Kohl folks and Katrina Rowell. Oh, okay. We also have the folks from PFM. We have Kevin and Julie that'll be able to talk about some of the financial implications and questions and answers along that. And so again, we look forward to our time together today, and staff will also be available to answer questions. And then we also look forward to the five of you having a conversation as well. So we're going to go ahead and go to screen sharing, and then I will share the presentation. So, but I think hopefully everybody can hear us loud and clear, and we're good to go. So. All right, come on, drop out of there. I can get to the presentation mode. Covering it up. So. All right, Mayor and Commissioners, are y'all able to just see the full screen, or do y'all see presentation mode? Can one of y'all unmute and tell me?
Full screen.
I mean, yeah, I see
showing next slide as well as the.
Okay.
Yep.
Next slide's on the right.
Let's try that.
Yeah, now you got it.
Now you
Awesome. There we go. All right, I'm turning it over to Amy in the driver's seat.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning. It's great to be with you all, and I'm going to be walking through first. How do I advance this slide?
Just click
here?
Bottom right. There you go.
There we go. Okay, so I'll be talking first and giving a recap of what we heard when we were here last January, and then I'm going to turn it over to Claire to cover some of the design sketches that we started working on based on all the feedback that we heard. So it's great to be with you all this morning, and I remember a meeting with everyone in January 21st and 22nd. Just a reminder that this work is all a follow-up of those meetings that were held in January. And so since we were here, we've taken some time to go through all of the feedback and summarize it. And we've actually put together this report that is available, and it's going to be available on the city's website. So I'm going to cover some of the highlights, but again, it'll be available for anyone who wants to really dive in and read over kind of the summary of the meetings and the feedback that we heard. So, we had a few different meetings. We had evening sessions at the Rotunda, as well as a lunchtime session in room 10, and, heard, it's really just a open conversation about what folks wanted to see for the marina site. Lots of brainstorming together, imagining what the possibilities are for the future. We did what we called the visual preference survey, which we had, boards full of pictures of different precedents for open spaces and commercial uses and residential uses and potential marina supporting services. And we gave people green dots and red dots and told them to put the green dots on the things that they liked the most and the red dots and things they didn't. So this wasn't a vote per se, but it was a way of just, brainstorming together and trying to understand what people's preferences were, and a way to break the ice and really start to think, three-dimensionally about what the possibilities are. And, I will say that also, through this exercise, we had lots of feedback on the exact pictures, but then also, it just brought up other ideas, things that people were writing in and giving us information on the survey responses that I'll cover in a minute. But on this page, you can see these were the four images that had the most green dots on each board. It's just to kind of get an idea of things like small scale waterfront dining, the neighborhood amphitheater, the boat ramp as things that were most likely. We got a lot of feedback on residential. And I'll cover it in a minute. We had a question specifically about residential uses, or a couple of them in the exit survey. And initially I had a lot of feedback about, not a lot of enthusiasm for residential, but then had more conversations with the participants and heard that that the concerns about residential a lot of them were rooted around the not wanting to see the marina site get more privatized and feel like it belongs to someone else, or, wanting to be able to have full public access. And so when we had images like the one you see, the third down on the right side, that were more mixed use buildings with ground floor commercial uses that could have residences above, and similar setup to what is in the existing downtown today, where it feels more like it's for the whole community and open for everyone to use. That had a lot more enthusiasm. So that is what we're going to be showing in the sketches that you see later. And so I'm going to move on to the next image. So the other report has all of the answers to the survey responses, as well as, we had a lot of, we call them sticky note responses, but they were, notes on the maps themselves or just notes on boards around the room. And I'm going to zoom in on, some of the things that we were heard the most often. So, again, 26% mentioned some of the attractions that could be part of the development or improvements on the site. A lot enthusiasm for a marine science center, as well as amphitheater and informational displays, things about the waterfront itself. 21% mentioning public spaces in parks, having family-friendly environment and recreation opportunities available. Then there was 20% mentioning marina infrastructure, so the boat ramp being very important to participants, services like the fuel dock and things for fishing, just what other support for marina uses. And then 17% mentioning commercial and residential development. So even though not a lot of enthusiasm for residential by itself, there was a lot of comments about mixed use and a village style atmosphere, walkability, and as well as opportunities for waterfront dining and small shops and retail. So some of the questions we asked: what types of public gathering spaces are most needed? The two that got the most responses were quiet waterfront areas, as well as flexible multi-use spaces. So I think our takeaway from that is that there has to be a variety of spaces, because no one space can meet both of those things. So having a variety of different experiences on the waterfront. And then should the marina prioritize many smaller spaces or one or a large space? And so overwhelmingly 80% a balance of both. Here are some quotes from the write-ins on the survey. What did you think the marina should become in the future? And so, not surprising, the center point for life downtown, a central hub for Panama City that celebrates our culture, fishing, art, and music, a destination for traveling boaters, and a publicly accessible space to see the water. What should be non-negotiable, even if it costs more? Ingress and egress by all means, including walking, cycling, vehicles, etc. Public access for residents and tourists alike. What is the most important thing to protect or preserve as the marina changes? And so ideas for public access, having the boat ramps, but family-friendly oriented activities, fishing areas, waterfront views, green space, marine life, and parking. So again, quite a list of things to accommodate, but a good plan, we could accommodate all these things together. So who should the marina serve? And so we had asked if it should be for the local community or regional visitors, and then 71% feeling that it could serve both as long as it still feels local. And there's a lot of on the write-ins, talking about something that feels authentically, like a authentic extension of downtown Panama City. Here's that question specifically about housing. So again, when we just asked the multiple choice question, we did get 70% no to housing, but again, other feedback about mixed use, much more positive. What concerns you the most? Keeping the marina public and functional, the attempting to maximize income, but keeping it public and green, and wanting to see resilience to the hurricanes. What excites you about the marina's future? More activity, social engagements, placemaking, boats, recreation, jobs, and what it can mean to Bay County residents and visitors. So again, many ideas, but what we tried to do is listen for the things that were heard most often and, that, could reflect points of consensus. And so we boiled it down to these 5 big ideas that kind of are guiding the sketches that we put together. And so first and foremost, public access. Again, so having, the fully accessible public waterfront, the waterfront trail, waterfront public spaces. The comfortable human scale environment, so making it walkable just like your downtown, comfortable, something that people feel comfortable relaxing in and enjoying the public spaces. But third, enhancing and preserving the marina infrastructure. So making sure that the idea of, all of the marina functions, the boat ramp, fishing, all those things are still accommodated and foremost importance on this site. 4 is talking about the connection to Harrison Avenue and downtown energy. So really just making it an obvious extension of downtown onto the waterfront. And then 5, making sure that it's fiscally responsible and bringing long-term value to the city. So, wanting to, and I know folks from PFM are on the call today, so I look forward to hearing their thoughts on, initial analysis that they are starting to look at, what the value is. So, these ideas are all synthesized in the report, again, that you can read over online. But I'm going to zoom in on the map on the top left corner of this page. So this is our synthesis map. So again, taking all the ideas and starting to sketch what that means in plan form. So, the gray box on the bottom right, reserving, very important, the boat ramp, the boat trailer parking on that portion of the site. But there is a portion in the central of the site around Harrison, or the extension of Harrison Avenue, that really is kind of a core opportunity area for improvements on the site. And so you can see the hatch for the purple hatch, opportunity for mixed use, similar to Harrison Avenue, extending across the site. The green circle, an idea for like a signature public space, was mentioned in many comments, and so having that right on the waterfront. The T-Dock itself, lots of feedback about, having linear park spaces with, shading, but also, allowing for fishing and access to the boats on the area. And so that is going to be reflected in the sketches that you see. And, again, kind of that extension of Harrison Avenue from downtown to the T-Dock area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire, and she'll walk through the design sketches that we've been working on to date.
Good morning. So Amy just wrapped up what we did with you guys all in January, and I'm going to be explaining how we took that feedback and took it from 2D to 3D and how it started informing the actual design of this, the preliminary design. So when we stepped back, we did look at some scale studies from across the country of great marina areas or waterfront areas, just to confirm from scale of blocks, streets, and amount of open space allocated. You'll see the site is in gray, and then we've overlaid on top of it places that you're familiar with, like Seaside, the Charleston waterfront, just to get a feeling for how those other models that are obviously successful, walkable urban places would have treated the site. And so that gave us a really good jumping point to root our design. So taking that synthesis plan that Amy just walked you through, this was our first sketch, our first pass at laying out actual buildings, streets, and parks on the site itself. You'll also notice that the FEMA map was overlaid. One of the key components was bringing the historic grid from Harrison Avenue down to meet the marina. That was a big idea, a concept coming from the charrette, but also it's just rooted in really great placemaking, putting buildings on the higher elevation and leaving the lower elevation for park space, open, and so on. That also helps you on cost when it comes to these buildings in the floodplain and resiliency. So those first red buildings you see there is continuing the Harrison Avenue streetscape and development pattern, prioritizing development on higher elevation, and making sure that the buildings front the public space. That's something that is really key to make this human scaled walkable environment, is to have at least 3 sides fronting your open public space, so that you have that sense of enclosure and it feels like a room rather than kind of this open windswept area. And taking that one step further, this is the current site plan that you see here, just showing it in a more formal so we can start to get a feeling on square footages, parking counts, and acreage of open space. So we'll show you that in 3D, how that form takes shape. This is the existing site. And this is development scenario 1. So we've laid out a framework of blocks and streets and open space. But the reason we call this development scenario 1 is because we've made some assumptions on height and on building footprint that obviously can change within that framework. What you're looking at here is 1 to 3 stories and very small building footprints, 1,000 to 3,000 square feet approximately. And that's mirroring the grid that you have existing north of Government Street. So I'm going to walk you through how this development scenario meets the 5 big goals that Amy walked us through earlier. The first being the big idea being public access and civic waterfront. The community felt that the marina should serve primarily as a public waterfront destination for residents and families, really emphasizing access, those views to the water, fishing areas, shading pavilions, and lots of different types of open space. So you'll see there's 4 different open spaces shown here. You've got your amphitheater, lawn, and park, labeled as A. You've got your existing B, waterfront lawn. And then the C is your central lawn that exists now, but it has been expanded in this scenario. And we'll show you how that works in section. And then we've added T-Dock linear parks, so that we've got a lot of feedback that for families and kids to be able to hang out on this waterfront amenity, playground, shade structures, amenities like restrooms, and would be really helpful in elongating the time that people are able to stay out there. So from a public access standpoint, these were our primary elements. We've also got the waterfront walking path circulating throughout the site, and these sunset swings that face west. We know that a lot of people really enjoy the time they get at the marina doing that, so we wanted to add an amenity that supported that. The amphitheater, just zooming in, right now it's drawn as a large square. It's about 1.2 acres. And from the feedback we got, we want different types of open spaces, some that are for large events, some that are quieter. This would be for your larger event. And you have options of how that can be programmed. So you could use the entire space for an amphitheater, which could seat up to 7,000. Now it's just lawn, so you don't have seats. But the option 2 would be a smaller amphitheater. This 2,000 person amphitheater, that shape is actually taken from Seaside, so you can kind of get a feel for scale. And then you could program in the darker green, nature play park, passive parks, fountains, footpaths, trees, and so that you maybe have a right-sized amphitheater. We heard a lot of feedback from most people that an amphitheater was of interest, but it didn't want to be too big. So you've got options there. From a public access standpoint, we wanted to look at primary vehicular and pedestrian circulation. The orange is pedestrian, blue is vehicular. You'll see this labeled as loading and drop off. We can discuss if that should be loading and drop off, so that you've kind of got a constant turnover of the ability to park and load your boat up. You don't have to search for a parking spot. You can take your things, the coolers and luggage out for the day to put onto the boat, and you've always got a spot there available, and then you go and park elsewhere. Or you could look at having less turnover, but the benefit of being able to leave your car there all day. That's more of a management and operations thing than actual design. Let's see. Big idea 2, enhancing and preserving marina infrastructure. So obviously we learned that the boat ramp, boat trailer parking, and the slips are givens. That is something that is going to be part of this plan and really important to the community. So we just wanted to build on top of that where we've added a opportunity for a marina supply store with restrooms and showers, which were both requests from the community and popular in many working and successful marina waterfronts. You've got your fuel dock here, shaded pavilions, as you'll see, modeled after something from Charleston. I've got some images of that later on. Here we took the section of the T-dock and looked at how we might be able to allocate a little bit more space to the central open lawn. And what we would have one way in this scenario, looping around. Then you've got your parking or loading. And then you've got a full 30 feet for loading, equipment, the sunset swings in between the trees, and then a walking path before you reach the dock. And right now, the way that that's designed from the engineering drawings that we got, you do have access points along this western edge. And so we've lined those up with the drawing so that you can easily access the boats from there. Big idea 3 was seamless connection to Harrison Avenue. So it'd be continuing the streetscape improvement down Harrison Avenue. The 4th is just ensuring that it feels comfortable in human scaled environments. So we know that we've achieved that north of Government Street with the buildings facing the public space or the street frontage, wider sidewalks, slower traffic movement, and increasing walkability. We've also got those T-dock enhancements with those shaded pavilions and swings and small scale building footprints. So you'll see that we don't have any building footprints currently over 3,500 square feet. But of course, these buildings could be combined at the ground floor if you wanted a larger commercial footprint as the phasing develops. So it's meant to be really incremental and flexible. So the last and probably what we want to talk with you guys about the most is the fiscal responsibility and long-term value. This was important to the community that we improve daily usability, but we also strengthen the local economy and generate tax revenue. And so what we've been looking at, we took a first stab at phasing. We're really curious to get your feedback and PFMs. The general principle that we followed here was tying a public amenity with a development parcel so that you had the revenue generating ability to also help with the funding mechanism for the public amenity or open space. So phase 1 had your Western Basin improvements. Phase 2, we chose to start with Harrison Avenue streetscape so that people really start getting used to walking to the site, and you are able to use that vibrancy and energy that's already on Harrison and can bring that down so there's not such a gap between Harrison and Harrison's Bar and Grill. And then looking at preparing the site infrastructure and those development parcels. So when you start the streetscape improvement, that kind of unlocks the horizontal, the pads on either side of Harrison Avenue for private investment. Phase 3 would be the Eastern Basin and Eastern development parcels. And again, that's not city having to develop those. It's just getting the horizontal infrastructure ready in that one area. And then phase 4 would be the T-dock improvements in the Western parcel prep. So that's one opportunity. Another way to look at it would be this scenario for phasing, slightly different in that it leads with a civic anchor of the amphitheater. in phase 2. So we know phase 1 is the Western Basin, but phase 2 now has the amphitheater attached to the streetscape improvements and these first few buildings. What that does is really locks in that momentum building activation with the civic amphitheater. Not a whole lot of investment up front. If it's more of like a lawn and lightly programmed, then it can grow in with more amenities for that music event later on. But it also kind of shows to current investment or future investors that the city's made immediate public value within the amphitheater and the streetscape improvements. And that kind of has a ripple effect of how phase 3 and phase 4 would look. One thing I did want to note is that in phase 4, we're trying to save the highest value land for last, so that if you wanted to go higher in density or kind of have that highest and best use on the waterfront, you've saved that for last rather than using it first. So really curious to get your feedback on that. First pass. Now, from a development scenario, I just want to run you through the numbers we have. These are approximate and just our initial take. Our assumptions, 3 stories is our average height and our average unit size PFM. This is probably more important for you. What we assumed was 900 square feet. That's just assuming we have a range of studio to 2 or 3 bedroom. The program allocation in this development scenario is that the ground floor use is commercial, and the total square footage is 96,000 square feet. And then with the second and third floor being residential, we have 160,000 square feet, which comes out to about 152 units. So we know that the development could be a lot more dense on the site, but we wanted to start here because we felt like it reflected the community feedback we got. And we know that financial analysis is coming to let us know the feasibility of this scenario. From a parking standpoint, we only, ADA requires 30 spaces required by code. And while we're only required for ADA parking, we're providing 554 spaces on site, and then supporting additional demand through nearby shared parking, which would allow us to meet the projected demand and also the walkability of the site. So we don't want to use a lot of the site for surface parking, because then we lose a lot of critical land for revenue generation and amenities for the public and walkability. So just kind of looking at that max demand on the code based, this is not required. It's just taking your code, applying it to the development you see here, of how much demand could there be. Then we've got the peak demand, which is a 20% internal capture, assuming 20% of people would be walking up and down Harrison and come to this space. So that total is 872 spaces, and we've got supply for 554 on site. And the required is 28. Then for the event days, that would be managed through shared parking and event operations. We heard a lot from the community that a 5-minute walk from offsite to the marina would be expected and very much manageable for most. They would use the loading and drop off areas to drop off those that would need assistance in that walk, but that most people understand that this is an amenity and that they don't want paved over. So just showing you some existing images, the existing image, development scenario 1. And we have 3 other development scenarios that just lightly adjust it so you can see some other benefits you could unlock. So development scenario 2 adds these 4 buildings on the front. Oh, can't see my cursor. Okay, I'm going to flip back and forth. See if you notice a difference. Very small difference from a development standpoint. Adds a few residences, adds a bit more commercial. But what it does is fronts the water or the park, the waterfront park there, and makes it a bit more human scale and a better streetscape. Development scenario 3 is, should you decide that you want more parking on site rather than using the shared parking within a quarter mile, You could look at a garage, which could add, I'll have to look back at my numbers, but let's see. I know you're interested in that one. A garage of this size could add 500 spaces. And then there's also an opportunity for a larger event space here on the T-Dock. So rather than a one-story supply store, restrooms and bathrooms, you could have a two-story structure with maybe an event space on the second floor, which could also be revenue generating. So just looking at different options and scenarios there. And from the numbers, the actual development scenarios are pretty close with the commercial just ranging from 95,000 square feet at the minimum to 110,000 square feet, and residential units only jumping by 18. But really what those do for you, scenario 2 increases your density and enhanced public space. Scenario 3 increases on-site parking capacity, and scenario 4 increases development on the T-Dock and that revenue generation. And so I think with that, we'd love to get your input and feedback and also hear from PFM on their initial findings.
All right. So I don't know. I think maybe before we jump over to the mayor and the commissioners, Julie or Kevin, if y'all would like to briefly address the commission and some of your preliminary responses, I would defer to you, Julie.
Great. I believe that Kevin is on, and I know that he has a time constraint. You know what? And oh, there he is. Okay. Kevin, are you able to take it over? Thank you.
Sure. Good morning. I guess, Jonathan, do you want me to share my screen, or I don't know if you have those like handful of slides I'd sent you yesterday.
You can go ahead and share yours, sir.
Okay. Let me do
that. Commissioners, just a reminder to please turn your camera on. Thank you. This is being recorded and streamed for the public. Thank you.
I think I will need sharing capability from the host.
Yeah. Donald, please give Kevin permission to share. Thank you, sir.
Let me know if you all can see that.
We can.
Okay, great. Yes, as Julie said, I apologize. They have not figured out how to the cloning technique yet to be in two places at once. So I'll give you the elevator pitch here, and then I'll need to jump into a car. As provided by Dover Kohl, they provided the development scenarios that Claire had run through. Kind of scenarios 1, 2, and really kind of 4, as scenario 3 is really just a scenario 2 with some tweaked parking. And what we wanted to do was really look at the revenue potential generated by the project, assuming some type of structure of tax increment via the existing hotel and Harrison's, as well as future ground lease revenue for the city-controlled acreage of the marine uplands. So we'll see here is, now this is really kind of where we kind of did a brief preliminary market analysis, looking at and understanding based on data from the market, what are rental rates for multifamily apartments, what are lease rates for commercial retail space, and really trying to figure out, what is the revenue potential based on the density volumes provided. Now, if you think really big picture, and not this, simplify it too much, but as mentioned, more green space equals less green dollars, right? We're trading every time we trade acreage for green space, and we can't replace it with density or development. That's going to be a revenue constraint from the project going forward, unless you really try to go vertical on density. But what we tried to do is we assumed for the city component, a 99-year ground lease, noting that really the reality is you can only, to the extent that there's going to be revenue potential from the site, you can really only bond off the first 30 years of those dollars for, financing, any elements of infrastructure that may be needed to bring this out of the ground. So as we went through those scenarios, we kind of put all this into the machine and generated the findings here of, preliminary revenue findings based on scenarios 1, 2, and 3, which is really 2, and then scenario 4. Note that there is a slight typo there. The 30-year average ground lease revenue should be 8.4 million with estimated total of 9.2. Not a dramatic difference, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. You can see here the revenue ranges, estimated revenue from ground lease and tax increment is around 8.6 to 10.6. As Claire mentioned, just those additional 4 buildings in scenario 2, while not a dramatic, development, increase, it does matter from a revenue perspective. That's, by our estimates, another $2 million in net present value of, revenues coming back. So, density and intensity is important, but also understanding, obviously, what you want the site to look and feel like will probably govern the day. But wanted to, bring that, note that, that additional development does have value going forward. But that's really kind of the quick analysis that we put together based on the information that we're provided, and happy to answer any questions you may have. But this kind of gives order and direction and magnitude, right, of potential revenue going forward.
Can you confirm these are annual? Mr. Zimmerman asked that question, Kevin.
No, so what you'll have here, these aren't necessarily annual revenues. What we've done is we've looked at the present value of the revenue stream back. So what we did is we forecasted the revenue stream out to 30 years and then brought it back into present value dollars. So if you think about the idea of trying to take the revenue stream that would be generated from the project and monetize it today, to think about, hey, if we went out and issued bonds against this forecasted ground lease revenue or tax increment, what it could mean for the funding of public infrastructure that may be necessary to bring this out of the ground. I didn't put together a detailed annual cash flow. I do have it. It's just not a part of this presentation, but we're happy to share that as part of supplemental information.
Thank you so much, Kevin. If you'll stop sharing your screen, please, sir.
Sure.
All right. Without further ado, we'll jump right into it. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I had a question for Kevin. The rent projections, where are those assumptions coming from?
Yes, those are coming from CoStar. We kind of grabbed the data that we could and grabbed really Bay County and looked at Class A space built in the last 10 years as kind of a guide in today's rents, and noting that there's probably a rent premium for being on the waterfront there in the mixed use piece. So we kind of built that in. It's kind of hard to tell, if we're really forecasting out a couple of years what that market may look like, but it was kind of a best guess and going, okay, is $2.50 a square foot for multifamily apartments on the water, good number, maybe a little low, a little conservative, but that's kind of what was driving the day. And then on the lease revenue, kind of the same type of analysis. Class A retail space, Bay County wide, we didn't really bake in too much of a premium for rents on the water, but that was kind of the thought process.
Yeah,
Mayor, what have you found that in the rents? How much have you seen rents going up, Mayor?
Me?
Yeah, how much have you seen increase over year downtown?
I have automatic escalations. I have 4% escalations in all my leases.
Okay.
To at least keep up with CPI.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, note that for analysis on this, we really only assumed a 2% growth. To be conservative on that. If you're going to really bond against it, we want to make sure you don't get over our skis going forward, from that type of. But to your point, it definitely could be a little bit higher.
And also to add to that you would need an additional city pledge. You would not be able to bond just against those future projected revenues. That would be insufficient for a bank or other lenders.
In these sort of projects, do you see land leases or rent shares or a combination of both? And it kind of looks like you're doing a combination of both, but what do you typically see?
Yeah, that's kind of the piece of it is like we kind of showed the fair market value share or a percentage rent, and it's really trying to understand, really the appetite for risk, on the city side, right? If you're like, hey, do we really think, if rents are really going to move, can we participate on the upside? And there's also other revenue potential for the city we didn't bake in, as projects, get built and sold. Is there a transfer fee that the city can collect, as well as any upside revenue share that can be built in? We didn't add those in for purposes, but there is some upside there. But to your point, it really kind of goes both ways. It's really kind of, the appetite for risk, right? And trying to, really decide, how secure do we want this revenue stream, or do we want to take a little more risk and participate on upside if we think it's going to be a home run?
But the only way to get ad valorem is to put the ground lease on there. Correct? Because otherwise it's city property and it's not taxable. The ground lease creates that cover.
Correct. The ground lease is basically just, rather than, because the city owns the property, the ground lease becomes your ad valorem revenue stream effectively. Correct. From those elements. Right. Correct.
So that's assuming there's somebody that is private leasing it from us. Is that?
Yes, that'd be the assumption.
Yeah, all right. We're going to go to Commissioner Granger. You guys' hand up, but just as a reminder, the entire downtown marina is in the CRA, so any ad valorem would go that route. Go ahead, Commissioner Granger.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. So, can y'all hear me? All right. So, thank y'all very much for putting this together. I've got kind of two different questions here. One is that we saw that, I think it was 28% of the people said that they wanted to see something like an aquarium or an aquarium. But we didn't really necessarily see that panned out in the conceptual design. Any thoughts on that? So that's question number one. Question number two is I really like the extension of Harrison Avenue into the marina space so that it looks very fluid and flowing. I think that's a very, very smart idea. I like conceptual design number 2 and number 4. Was there any thoughts to doing both to kind of maximize the commercial use, or rather revenue generating off of the city? Because the event space would be, I agree, it would be great to generate revenue, but then also the commercial space would also generate revenue for the city. So was there any thoughts to combining those two?
Yeah, I'll start with the second first. You could absolutely combine two. We separated them just in case there was one reason you didn't want to do one of them. We didn't want it to exclude the other, but you could absolutely combine the two. And actually, from a design standpoint, I think it'd be a great idea. With the aquarium, we did get a lot of interest in that particular use. What I would say is we need to understand a little bit more the form that it needs to take and the acreage that it has to have. It would be great if it could fit in a more urban format, because then it can support the overall walkability of the site and not kind of have that internal facing big box structure without many windows kind of take in the middle of the site, disrupting the walkability of it. And we also got a lot of comments that said, we're on the water, we're on the marina. Why are we inside? Why are we facing inwards when we really want to be kind of it to be walkable and vibrant? So I don't think the use in itself couldn't be on the plan provided. I think it's just the form that now we're talking about. Is there a more urban format that could fit within the current structure? Or if it's something that the community is really excited about, we could look at where an internal building like that maybe would have less impact on the walkability, but could still be on the site. And that's something we could definitely look at.
All right, Commissioner Hughes, your hand's up, sir. Go ahead. You're muted, Commissioner Hughes. You're muted.
Granger, I thought you had another comment.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the work you've done so far. I think we're on the right track. We've got, I think, some changes that just lay out. So, Kevin, I would like, if possible, or Julie, I would like to know the annual economic impact. How soon are we are we realizing any payback? I know that there's going to be a lot of cost in this, but on the entrance into the marina, I really like the idea of having the buildings there. And I said this to Alan last night. I've asked some local artists to just sketch out some old facades of buildings that we used to have here, the Cove Hotel, the Dixie Sherman, maybe even something downtown that they can make take off and do something with. But that's how you come into the marina, kind of old. But that's one of my thoughts on that building. I do want to point out on the sticky notes. I went through this till about 2:00 this morning, so I got a few points here. 8% of the people commented about the cost, but no less than 20% of all the sticky notes were about all the things that cost money and all the things that they want to do. So what I see already is a disconnect from the public's perspective of what it's going to cost us for them to have it. So I think we need to do an education here, a really good one for us and for them, on here's what it's really going to cost us for you to have this. How do you want to pay for it? You want us to raise your taxes? You want to cut something out? And this is a good time to be talking about this since we're talking about budgeting. So I do want to bring that to our attention. The 70% on the no residential, I did watch a resident empty out a red dot thing, an entire sheet on no residential. So it does skew the numbers when an entire sheet of red dots is put on one area, and it does skew those numbers. So I think less residential, that's different from your 2019 plan. But the amphitheater, Jonathan, can you put up the seaside slide, just the seaside one, not the overlay of the marina? Since this shows us a visual of what it really looks like, what seaside looks like right now. Is that possible, Jonathan? And then I also have that and Pensacola, because I think what they first pass have shown us. So right now, that's got amphitheater, green space, stormwater, parking, commercial, residential, and it's not over 3 stories. So since that's what they were talking, that's what was presented, there's an actual visual, not just a drawing. Now, if you go to Pensacola, which is going to have some green space as well, it's going to have less, it's going to have more green space and less residential here.
Do you want me to put that one up, Commissioner?
Yes, sir, please. I just want us to see the difference in, people remember 83% of what they see. Sorry, Teach, it's not read, it's what they see. So, but if you'll show me that one as well, Jonathan, because this amphitheater idea is great. This is I see this down here is how they have all the shaded areas on our TDOT. But notice there's little residential on the right. There's slips on the left. And their marina's not as big as ours, but I think that follows more closely what they've offered as a design, just as similar as possible. But is it possible to show the slide that has the amphitheater, the site plan as they have it? Because that amphitheater it's a great idea, but it needs to be moved because the slips it fronts that wall. If I rent a slip, I need to be able to get there by my car, and that does not allow me to even get there by a trolley the way that it's set up. And we just need to move it around a little bit. And I'd also like for us to put in scale the plans of the boat ramp, so that we can see how this really works, instead of two strips of parking, because that's not how it's set up. I think that's fair to the public so that they can really see how that works. Does that make sense?
Hang on, I'm about to share that, sir.
Very last one, but we're bringing out the site plan so we can talk about your second to last point.
Okay.
Is this what you're talking about, Commissioner Hughes?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
This does too. So see when the amphitheater fronts the East Basin.
Mhm.
Those slips down there on the north side of the East Basin right there, they need to have access from the renters. So we need to be able to have vehicular traffic go there because the code says that we have to have one parking space per 4 slips. So we have to provide parking for the renters, for the boat renters, by code. I think that we ought to have a trolley system for the public to move around and limit traffic, other traffic, but we have to do that. So we would need to move that or
So
rearrange
can
it
I,
a little bit.
we can talk to that a little bit.
Okay.
Adding a street there would add cost. Is there something in the code that says that those spaces have to be adjacent, or could they be within walking distance? Because they
No,
would
but if
add
I'm renting a
cost.
slip, I'm not gonna park and get all my stuff and then bring it down to the boat. So this is
Well, maybe those are transient slips then.
okay. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Transient slips are the floating dock.
Well, we only have floating docks over here on the west side where St. Joe is. Outside of that, everything else is a static dock per the plans. But then can we also put the boat ramp as the plans show, Jonathan, to update that because it really shows the flow of how it was designed. It shows the larger boat ramp expansion as well as the parking because there's 50 boat trailer slips already in play on that plan.
Yeah, we could have Dover Kohl update this to be a little bit more accurate reflection of the
Okay.
expanded enhanced boat ramp in the trailer parking.
All right. And then I have a question for y'all, for the commission. If you were going to get any more density or where the tower is already blocks the view. So if you wanted to add a height, a story or two there, that's where you can get it because you're not blocking any more view. What are your thoughts on that if you were trying to take some away from somewhere else to put it over there?
Are you talking about St. Andrews Towers, Commissioner?
Yeah, no, yeah, the towers right there. And see, I think that's where the amphitheater stage ought to be is up there because that's where you got to load in and load out. So you got to remember anybody that's coming has to have load in and load out area as well.
So are you just suggesting that on the right-hand side or the east side of the map that we're seeing right now, that entire square just gets flipped, mirrored
I don't know about flipped.
on horizontal plane?
I showed you the seaside thing because it does all of what that is, just in a different setup. Everything that you see there is in the seaside deal except for parking. That actually adds parking into the deal. Since she used seaside as an example, that's why I put it in there. This amphitheater, from a logistics, doesn't work in a use perspective.
Yeah. Mayor, Commissioners, Clint just shared the current design that we're working on with the engineers. All of the access to the docks is from the spine. So kind of right here through the middle part.
Okay, is that parking or is that
That's access.
Access to on foot down to the actual docks themselves.
So there are no cars then on the T dock in this
We have
design?
parking. We have parallel parking shown there on the.
where?
We don't necessarily have to design this today.
We don't. I'm just,
Yeah.
you're right. And
But
then lastly,
conceptually, I want to understand what it is that, is feeding into it. So there won't be cars allowed, just trolleys to travel the T dock. So everybody who has boats has to take a trolley and not use their cars. That's the question I'm asking.
So that's no. So the idea is that there would be vehicular circulation around this part of the T dock,
I'm
one
sorry,
way
what is
around.
this part you're referring to?
If you can point.
Yeah, they can see the cursor. So if you want to show
Okay.
that. Yeah.
The blue has vehicular.
So it would be one way around that central spine. So you could do drop off and loading. The questions that we've been getting are, should there be a more permanent parking solution where people can leave their car all day, right? Or would it be just, temporary where you drop off and then go park permanently in one of the spaces, back further? So that's, something to be considered. But the idea here is that all along that T-dock, there would be vehicular access and space for at least loading and unloading, or there could be some, permanent parking spaces. That's to be discussed and decided.
Thank you.
Yeah, the trolley idea was for events. And right now you've got 2 streets bounding the amphitheater. So those are vehicular streets on the west and north. So from a loading aspect, it would be the exact same as having it move 1 block north, because you would have, again, access on 3 sides either way.
If you
That's how
put the
we're-
amphitheater on the north side, you would have Government Street and Harrison and you can make Government Street you could
You could,
be
but
fronted
it's
with
a busier
commercial.
street. You could, but it's a busier street. So that new street that we've added just north of the amphitheater is also
right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see who has their hands up. I'm sorry, while we're sharing my screen, I don't see. Let me go back to that. All right, Mayor Branch, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So I think we should, listening to some of the public last night, seeing the plans, we need to clearly state that, at least from my standpoint, I've had no communication with Dover Kohl. I've not tried to sway them. I've not sent them things. I've not had secret meetings behind the scenes. This is not Alan's design. Yesterday was the first time I saw anything, and I really, really, really liked the plans. I was surprised about how much I liked them. So a couple of the questions last night, one guy said, what's the RFQ strategy? And I'm like, whoa, people think we're really further down the line than we actually are. So I want to clearly state that, at least from my perspective, this is early design. I really love it. And this is the first time the commission has gotten to speak about the design at all. Last night we saw it for the first time, and just now we're speaking on it. So I want to make sure that the public understands that this is our first conversation about it. What I've heard so far from people, most generally people like it. The people who don't like this sort of concept are I really miss the giant parking lot folks. And what it is, actually, the reality of this plan is it's a shifting of priority from cars to people. Parking spaces are not for people, they're for cars. And this plan, even if we tweak it here and there, that's awesome. It has more space for the public than we've ever had on that marina in its entirety. There's more space for people than ever. And so, because not everyone owns boats, the vast majority of people do not. And so I'm super excited. Touching on one of Robbie's questions is, if we were to add some density, I think that would belong near the tower, because you kind of match up some of the density there with that large tower, the giant tower there. And so we could talk about that. The other misconception that people got hung up on the internet this morning and in the meeting is that these are just boxes. We're really talking about forms and uses. And no, there's not a box that says aquarium here, and there's not a box that says apartments right here. There's one that says parking garage, but in general, we're really talking about form, and these are giant boxes. The parking for the boat ramp is just a placeholder. We have actual parking that Jonathan and the team can share to the public, so that they're not confused by the just conceptual box that looks like a parking lot. People were confused about the flow of the parking lot and that kind of stuff. I'm very excited. I think there's a very nice incremental way to do this project, where we're taking the public along with us and making decisions along with them. And I think there's, even in the public spaces, we could even look at some of the spots, especially on that far past the spine out there, the top of the T, to do all grass, and maybe a sidewalk, and then expand the pavilions as a phase 2. We add concrete's more expensive than grass. And so there's even an incremental way to do an amphitheater. An amphitheater is kind of a loaded word. It could be, I was at, the Alpharetta Amphitheater in Georgia, which is like $30-40 million amphitheater. Been to the one in St. Augustine, probably not quite as expensive, but probably tens of millions, $30-40 million as well. And then Air Investment Park, which is grassy area with a permanent stage. We could do grassy area with a temporary stage. We can do this incrementally as well. I'm the most interested in the spaces between the buildings, and then how we incrementally start rolling this out with some momentum, and then how we particularly borrow off of these projections or fund the amenities and the infrastructure needed. I am concerned as we talk about rolling things out that we allocate too much money too soon to buildings infrastructure and not public amenity infrastructure. That worries me a little bit, but overall, I'm super happy about the design. We don't have to go into big detail right today, but certainly we should have a list of tweaks we'd like to see. My biggest thing is I don't want to see parking out on the T dock, and I love that the plans don't have that, so I really appreciate it. That's all I got.
Right. Commissioner Granger?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said, Mayor. And I do have to go. I have a meeting that I'm supposed to be in right now, a separate one. So I'm gonna have to go. So with this, what I will say is thank you so much to the Dover Kohl team and the PFM team. Thank you so much for putting in the time and effort and understanding what our citizens want and presenting this to us. To the rest of the commission and staff, what I would say is that my hope for this is for us to move forward and to use this data to drive what happens here. I don't want to be, in a position where the city is still discussing this 5 years from now. I would much rather us be a year from now talking about, okay, this is how we're actually going to execute these particular pieces. I absolutely agree with the incremental piece, but what I'm suggesting is that we not get bogged down in all the little minute details. Those things will flesh themselves out as we get closer to the scope of each individual thing. This is a 100,000-foot view. I like it. I like concept 2 and concept 4. I like them being pushed together. And so with that, I will say thank you and appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Granger. Commissioner Lucas?
Good morning. This is exciting. We've taken I think, a major turn toward actual development beyond what is currently there. And so thank you to all who have brought us to this point. I like the amphitheater location where it is now conceptually, and the way this is laid out with putting the public access close to the water. I think that is ideal in terms of what we want to do. Tallahassee has an amphitheater that also doubles as a stormwater runoff. I'd like to see us consider something like that in the event, that this space can help us in the event of, one of those 150-year flood instances in downtown Panama City. How does that infrastructure connect with possibly with any resilience that we might need in that area? So having it serve more than one use, I think, is good. The long-term structure of the financing of it. I know we've talked about a community development district. Do these financial projections, are they based on that kind of structure, or what kind of financial structure are the financial projections based on?
These projections are not based on a financing yet. They're just revenue projections at this point. But as we have feedback from the city, we'll work into a plan of finance if that's the direction that the city would like to go.
All right. Thank you. As the educational piece of it, to continue to walk along the mayor and Commissioner Hughes and others have extensive experience in this kind of development, have been thinking about it, knows the difference between big development and small incremental development, and us engaging the citizens around those decisions and understanding what feeds them. And I think it was Commissioner Hughes who made the point earlier about costs versus desire and that gap, that what the people want and what it's going to cost, not only to get what we want, but also to sustain and maintain it over time. And I am reminded that when the marina was first built, there was no just everybody all on the same page at the same time. And so a process had to be undergone to get us the marina that we're still talking about today. And so I think it's not a one and done with the community engagement education piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hughes?
Thanks for the, I want to explore the financing along Commissioner Lucas more as well. You know, what I'm thinking is we're almost where we want to get, we got the slips, almost getting ready to go out for bid. And I really want to focus on making sure that that gets done. And to Commissioner Granger's point, that we're not getting bogged down in this. Remember back my first time we talked about this in that first presentation, I asked, what's our goal? And I think this is a great time for us to think about clearly defining what Granger was just talking about. What's our goal and how do we want to walk through this? Because if we set the goals, we're not going to get bogged down. First one are the slips, get the bids done, get started on that. But then here, do we need to decide, are we going to privatize this in terms of bidding out for each spot and somebody's going to be a developer? Are we going to be that person? Those are going to affect our revenue. They're going to affect how we're going to go vertical. I really believe that with a little bit of work here on tweaking some of this stuff, we've got something that works. And I like the ideas. I just would like to see some more 3D model ideas of how we walk through, because like Julie, I didn't really understand that was a road on the north side of the amphitheater there. I just thought it was trees. So understanding that helped me say, okay, well, that's not as bad of an idea to move it up. But mine is about the money. What's it going to cost for us to build the docks and the utilities? And all of those need to be put in up front, okay? And then what's it going to cost us to build the vertical? But what's the revenue? What's the return on that for us? Or is it cheaper, less risk, that we revenue share like the mayor had talked about with somebody else? So those would be my concerns right now, still on the money.
All right. Julie, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, ma'am, or Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Lucas?
Just that our analysis is very preliminary, and once we have a chance to review it with the city and Dover Kohl, we can refine it, and we'll show those revenue projections. We'll provide those details and also work on a plan of finance whenever the city is ready.
Commissioner Hughes, you're muted, sir. Commissioner, you're muted.
My bad. The parking, can we take out the parking from the Indigo lot? Because we can't use that. I don't think that's fair to count that in the parking when that's leased property. Is that a fair thought or no?
I think it's still part of the site plan, and the overall downtown Marina. That's the only reason it was included.
And when we were casting projections of potential demand, we included the hotel use in there. We're thinking of the site as a whole. So when we're using them as the demand, we also supply.
Commissioner Hughes, all of this will be sent to St. Joe, obviously. Yeah. And so they're going to have input as well. And so it is collaborative. They don't have a veto, but they certainly have a huge interest in how this all is developed. So it would be in collaboration with St. Joe as far as parking and all.
Yes, sir. I just don't want to offer it up as counted in without them saying it's counted in. That would be my concern.
I concur 100%. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, just a thought in terms of parking and parking garage. I think having visited many larger cities, we are growing toward a larger city, and a downtown parking garage is probably something we need to see planned sooner rather than later. Would like to entertain, I know we don't own the land, but that old federal courthouse property across the street. If we're going to look at a parking garage, I'd like to see it not on the main marina itself, but nearby, adjacent. if that's something that we can factor into planning to at least determine the feasibility of whether that's possible. And then that also turns that property into something useful other than what it is right now.
Yes, ma'am. We have talked about that. I know that's also been mentioned as a potential site for an aquarium that is owned by a private developer. I know, it is owned by Mr. Kingston. I think some folks have talked with him. I know Mr. Zimmerman's talked to him recently about a number of issues. As a reminder, another site that was talked about was the parking lot that the DIB owns right there at the northeast corner of Park Avenue and East Beach Drive, kind of right across the street from the towers. That's a potential location as well down the road for a parking garage, which is going to be about a block off of Government Street and thus a block off the entrance to the marina. So I think both of those would be good sites.
Commissioner Lucas, I might know a guy who might be working with somebody looking to build a parking garage. So
You know a guy, huh?
I know a guy, so I might he might be working with somebody who wants to build one for us. So I'll keep you updated once he lets me know.
So I've asked Clint to give a quick update on the timeline for going out to bids on the first 44 slips. Mr. Murphy?
Yes, and we're hoping that changes to 50 slips because we've asked for an additional exemption. So we don't have that yet. So when we do bid it out, we'll do 44 slips and then an optional line item for additional 5 or 6 slips if that exemption comes in before we award the bid. So all we're waiting on now, we have the procurement documents together, ready to advertise. We're waiting on stamped electrical drawings, and that's the last piece of the puzzle before we can advertise it as work. I just sent an email during this meeting to see where we're at with that. I was told April 1st. Obviously, that didn't happen, so I'm hoping to get those any day now. As soon as we do, we'll post it and let you know.
And for clarity, that's from the engineer that St. Joe procured to do the design. That's who we're waiting on.
Associates, and it's actually a sub-consultant
to them.
Electrical engineer. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Commissioner Hughes, your hand back up, or was that from earlier?
Yes, it is. Clint, where are you on designing the utilities?
Yes. So we have the utility design. We're doing that in-house. The exception to that is the electrical. We're getting help from FPL, and they have sent us over a proposed easement. They need to run the electrical lines. We were actually waiting on this exercise to see what we think the uplands is going to look like, so that we can locate. The good news is we've always contemplated a layout very similar to what we're seeing here, where it splits at the bottom of the T as you enter the T into 2 roads. And that's the corridor that we're promoting for the utilities as well. One side to serve the West Basin, one side to serve the East Basin, and then to run on to the proposed marina store down at the end of by the East Basin and the existing fueling operation. So the utilities we have contemplated and have on paper to date in draft form fits very well with the scenarios that we're looking at. So as soon as we can kind of lock in which layout we're looking at, we can get that out pretty quickly. Again, with in-house.
What does that design entail? Water, sewer, power suppression?
That's right. You've got it.
And is that from Harrison's going out to the T-Dock and then coming back down, or are you putting stub outs for where that's going to be for the future?
Yes, so it's running all the way to the very end where the 911 memorial is.
Yes, sir.
It'll terminate there, with the exception of lines that have to run to the proposed ship store and the pump out station, which will be located adjacent to the fueling dock. So we'll have to run lines down there as well.
Mr. Murphy, can you give an update on the breakwater wall as well in the West Basin, which is going to be needed before we can put in the floating dock along the north side of that basin?
Yes. So we were hoping to get an exclusion for that because we're replacing an existing structure, but because the structure is completely gone, that was not possible. Unfortunately, we asked the question and the answer was no. So that has to be permitted. So the reason phase 1, if you notice on phase 1, it's the docks C and D, which are closest to the end of the teeth, because that's protected by the existing seawall. Docks A and B, which are closest to the hotel in Harrison's, cannot be constructed without a new seawall because they're too exposed to the bay.
And that's what the permit allows for.
Breakwater, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the permit comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for either Public Works or for Dover Kohl or for PFM, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners?
No, but if we have them, we can just send them to you guys and you'll send them on?
Yes, sir. You can send them for sure to myself and to Mr. Murphy and Mr. Jones, and we will make sure that they get it. Absolutely, sir.
That's great.
All right. Well, thanks everyone so much, and also those that tuned in to watch. Julie, thank you so much as well, and hope everyone has a blessed weekend. Take care.
Thank you. You all too.